Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some news: King Charles in tears over Prince Andrew, DNA bombshell sparks, palace chaos. An insider source has said that Buckingham Palace has descended into pandemonium after the confirmation of Prince Andrew's DNA test, validating the suspicions surrounding the royal family. The British monarchy made the unprecedented choice to publicly distance itself from one of its most senior and formerly prominent members, causing significant repercussions at Buckingham Palace and beyond. On 13th of January 2022, the palace released a concise but unequivocal statement declaring that Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, will be discharged from his military positions and deprived of his royal patronages. The message clarified that he will cease to use the honorific title His Royal Highness in any official context. This move was a significant break for an institution founded on centuries of hereditary rank ceremony and the symbolic power of titles. The action was not just a reorganization of ceremonial duties. It was a deliberate measure aimed at distancing the monarchy from an individual whose presence had become detrimental. By retracting official duties and titles from the Queen's second son, the palace indicated that the House of Windsor was willing to dissolve enduring personal and institutional connections to maintain the Crown's integrity. This public revelation was the culmination of a protracted controversy that had eroded the prince's reputation over many years. Throughout a significant portion of his adulthood, Prince Andrew had an unclear position in the public consciousness. He was sometimes lauded as a distinguished soldier of the Falklands War, an international proponent of commerce, and a recognizable figure in royal engagements. Concurrently with that public identity, a more sinister and more persistent narrative emerged, marked by dubious decisions, contentious associations, and finally serious accusations of sexual misconduct. The palace's traditional approach, maintaining public silence and managing issues discreetly, was insufficient in light of escalating evidence and judicial scrutiny. The enduring rumors, particularly concerning his connection to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, did not dissipate. Instead, they escalated until a civil lawsuit necessitated the monarchy to address the issue in a manner that its customary discretion could not permit. The revocation of his titles was not only a response to an isolated, unexpected revelation. It was the inevitable culmination of a protracted narrative that had unfolded transparently. It was an acknowledgement that the disparity between his public obligations and private conduct had expanded to a degree that it could no longer be aligned with the responsibilities and reputation of the Crown. This text provides a comprehensive analysis of Prince Andrew's life and trajectory, encompassing his upbringing and formative experiences, distinguished military service, subsequent public roles, and affiliations, the escalating controversy surrounding his connections to Jeffrey Epstein, his unsuccessful public response to allegations, and the legal and institutional consequences that led to his removal from public office and the reduction of his official status. The objective is to examine how a royal career, first characterized by duty and national service, culminated in involuntary public exile, and to analyze what this conclusion signifies about responsibility and privilege under the modern constitutional monarchy. Born on 19th of February 1960 as Andrew Albert Christian Edward, he became a member of the royal family as the Queen's second son and Prince Philip's third child, ranking after his older brother Prince Charles and his sister Princess Anne in the line of succession. His birth over a decade after Princess Anne signified a new era in the Queen's reign. By that time, she was a seasoned sovereign, and it established Andrew on a trajectory apart from that of the heir apparent. As the designated spare, a conventional status in royal families denoting a member unlikely to inherit the throne, Andrew had more freedom in his personal and professional decisions. That flexibility, however, was devoid of a clearly defined constitutional duty, resulting in both liberties and vague expectations. The spare has traditionally fulfilled many roles in royal households, a symbolic guarantee of dynastic continuation, a representative for peripheral public responsibilities, and at times, a tool of soft diplomacy. However, the job also entails diminished systematic monitoring and an increased dependence on individual judgment. Andrew's biography exemplifies the manifestation of such conflicting outcomes. Unencumbered by the rigorous state-directed grooming designated for the heir, he was afforded the opportunity to embark on a more traditional path into public life, attending military-style educational institutions, serving in the armed forces, and acquiring a range of patronages and commercially oriented positions, yet the absence of a precisely delineated public mandate rendered his decisions more conspicuous and at times more perilous. This amalgamation of liberty and informal expectation is significant as it underscores a persistent contradiction in contemporary monarchies. The public anticipates that royals will embody national ideals, but the institutions that cultivate them often provide diminished responsibility for individuals who do not inherit directly. Junior royals face a paradox. They must provide public value to justify their exemption from conventional professions, while concurrently benefiting from private privileges that shield them from regular scrutiny. In Andrew's situation, the flexibility afforded him options unavailable to others. Yet it also implied that his personal choices, relationships, business affiliations, and lifestyle shaped his public character in ways that the palace's traditional regulations were not prepared to manage. Andrew's upbringing combined traditional royal norms with the contemporary character development methodology advocated by his father. He was the first offspring of a reigning monarch to be born in Buckingham Palace since the mid-19th century, underscoring the persistence of tradition amid the family's adaptation to modernity. His formative years were supervised by a governess, as is traditional for royal offspring, prior to his enrollment at Heatherdown School in Berkshire, a preparatory institution intended to equip him for further study. Subsequently, he emulated his father and eldest brother by enrolling in Gordonstoun in Scotland, an institution renowned for its rigorous curriculum that prioritizes physical endurance, outdoor activities, and the development of autonomy. Gordonstoun's educational philosophy focused on character development and leadership through adversity, significantly influenced the young members of the senior royal generation. The formative years, characterized by a combination of isolation and structured discipline, solidified traits commonly linked to the contemporary royal male: an ease with hierarchical institutions, an inclination towards public service, and a tendency to maneuver through privileged environments with a level of casual confidence. The lack of a well-defined constitutional function allowed Andrew's personality and personal decisions to significantly influence his public image. During his adolescence and early adulthood, Andrew developed a public persona characterized by charm and an apparent accessibility. In the media of the 1970s and early 1980s, he was frequently depicted as an extroverted, attractive family member, traits that garnered him attention and the tabloid nickname Randy Andy. This appellation conveyed a blend of affectionate amusement and disapproval in the press. It recognized his popularity and exuberance, while also alluding to a reputation for romantic escapades and impulsive conduct. A public character might benefit the monarchy in its efforts to update its image, showcasing an approachable human aspect of a historically distant institution. However, the same attributes that contributed to his popularity sometimes strengthened views of superficial judgment, an impression that would ultimately prove more significant over time. The British media's obsession with the personal lives of royals has consistently influenced public impressions. Tabloids and television shows have alternately exalted and ridiculed young royals, creating a popular narrative that intertwines glamour with controversy. For Andrew, the interaction between widespread popularity and invasive examination produced a public persona that was both relatable and prone to exaggeration. In that atmosphere, private friendships and social interactions transcended personal affairs, becoming components of a public record through which character was assessed. Over the decades, as celebrity culture increased and tabloid influence extended, the distinction between private indiscretion and public failure diminished, resulting in more severe repercussions for perceived mistakes in judgment. While Prince Charles was meticulously groomed for the demands and duties of monarchy, Andrew was directed towards a traditional service-oriented vocation suitable for a younger royal, the military. A military career has historically provided younger royal sons a means to cultivate discipline, fulfill civic duty, and establish legitimacy via personal accomplishment rather than only through inheritance. For Andrew, the Royal Navy offered a practical and emblematic alternative to a solely ceremonial life. It was a domain where technical proficiency, valor, and collaboration were essential, and where the perception of shared danger with common troops might establish a royal identity via concrete duty. Military service included an expectation of sacrifice and camaraderie among ordinary soldiers, which might enhance the sense of privilege, an essential asset for royals pursuing popular legitimacy. For a monarchy increasingly reliant on positive public perception and media portrayal, such evident service was advantageous. The military forces have historically offered a platform for royals to get credentials and establish their identities based on merit, despite these criteria functioning within a larger framework of hereditary privilege. Andrew's naval career functioned as both a personal calling and a story that conferred public legitimacy. Nevertheless, even in these first decades, the divide between public accountability and private behavior continued to expand. The disparity between the conscientious public figure and the target of incessant rumor became more evident as media scrutiny of his social life intensified. The palace for decades adhered to a guiding concept encapsulated as "never complain, never explain," which included keeping dignified quiet amidst gossip and controversy. Yet this strategy proved unable to suppress the proliferation of persistent narratives. The discord between his official duties and personal affiliations presaged the larger dilemma that would subsequently arise: a disparity between the principles of royal service and the complicated nature of individual decisions. The policy of restraint based on the principle that public disputes should not be exacerbated by defensive remarks was increasingly challenged in a media landscape defined by continuous news cycles, social media amplification, and a more critical public. The palace, which formerly depended on press discretion and public reverence for protection, now faces a transformed power dynamic due to the internet age. Narratives could no longer be readily limited. They might disseminate internationally within hours and gain traction via the commentary of analysts and the mobilization of advocates. In this context, quiet may be seen as complacency, and the repercussions of inactivity might hasten reputational deterioration. Andrew's military service would emerge as the most illustrious segment of his public life, serving for many years as a definitive tribute to his valor and dedication. Subsequent to his departure from Gordonstown, he joined the Royal Navy in 1979 under a short service commission and underwent training as a helicopter pilot. He became proficient in the Westland Sea King, a heavy-lift helicopter primarily designed for anti-submarine warfare, although versatile enough for troop transport surveillance and search and rescue missions. He enlisted with 820 Naval Air Squadron and was allocated to HMS Invincible, a carrier whose operational responsibilities positioned him at the forefront of naval aviation operations. The Falklands War of 1982, a struggle exceeding 40 days initiated by Argentina's takeover of the British-administered Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic, was a crucial juncture in his military career. At the age of 22, Andrew was sent into an actual battle theater while serving on HMS Invincible. Government deliberations ensued over the wisdom of deploying a royal family member into a perilous situation. Finally, the Queen acquiesced and let her son serve alongside his compatriots in the armed forces. The assignment subjected him to circumstances that evaluated both his technical proficiency and personal bravery. Throughout the 74 days of combat, Andrew's responsibilities were significant and perilous. As a member of the Sea King crew, he participated in anti-submarine patrols, identifying submerged or surface dangers to the task force, and executed casualty evacuation flights, extracting injured troops from perilous forward positions and delivering them to hospital ships or safer areas. Notably, operations in which his helicopter functioned as a decoy to divert Argentine Exocet missiles sea-skimming anti-ship munitions away from significant naval vessels. These missiles exhibited their lethality throughout the conflict, most notably in the loss of HMS Sheffield. By intentionally maneuvering in patterns aimed at attracting missile radar locks, Andrew and his aircrew increased their danger to save the fleet. He subsequently characterized himself as a very good target, recognizing the inherent personal danger. His aircraft was allegedly targeted throughout the fight, highlighting that his contribution was not only symbolic. The impact of his military service during WT on popular opinion was significant. He returned from the South Atlantic not as a subject of paparazzi, but as a serviceman who had endured the perils of war alongside regular sailors and soldiers. Media coverage, formal accolades, and popular opinion supported the portrayal of a prince who had shown his valor under adversity. A widely disseminated photograph of the Queen welcoming him upon the fleet's return encapsulated a moment of family relief and national pride, underscoring the personal stakes inherent in public duty. For several observers, his military background served as a counterbalance to any accusations of frivolity or misconduct. It was often used by admirers to validate his character and sense of obligation. After his active naval duty, which persisted in various capacities for many years, Andrew faced the common difficulty of a younger senior royal, securing a steady and significant place within the monarchy's institutional framework. He shifted his focus from military accomplishments to a range of governmental responsibilities aimed at leveraging the crown's soft power. This included various royal patronages, official affiliations with charitable, cultural, and educational institutions, whereby a member of the royal family imparts status and prominence to social initiatives. Such patronages serve as a traditional means by which royals enhance civic life, generate funding, and draw public attention to pertinent concerns and organizations. In the 1980s and 1990s, Andrew engaged in several patronages, endorsing programs in education, science, technology, and youth involvement. By participating in public engagements, inaugurating new facilities, interacting with businesses, and visiting community events, he fostered an image of a dynamic and approachable representative of the monarchy. These responsibilities illustrate the soft diplomacy inherent in contemporary royal engagements. By participating in events and supporting institutions, a royal may cultivate goodwill and foster relationships that benefit both public and private entities. The function of patronage fulfills both symbolic and pragmatic purposes. It assists charities in fundraising and acquiring media exposure, while providing the monarchy with a tangible presence in national affairs beyond ceremonial display. His post-military public career reached its zenith in 2001 when he was designated as the United Kingdom's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. This position, unlike many ceremonial royal appointments, had a distinct practical purpose to advance British business interests, internationally cultivate trade partnerships, and entice foreign investment to the UK. In this role, Andrew extensively traveled, engaging with government officials, business leaders, and prospective investors across various regions, from the Middle East to Central Asia, striving to acquire contracts and improve Britain's economic outlook. Advocates said that his royal title may facilitate access to opportunities often unavailable to standard diplomats or business representatives, allowing him to serve as a compelling envoy for UK industry. Andrew's enthusiasm for this effort was apparent. He often portrayed himself as a progressive influence inside the monarchy, emphasizing quantifiable economic results. However, the job was not without controversy. Critics highlighted the financial implications of his trips and activities, sometimes subsidized by state monies, as well as the optics of his associations with despotic governments and corporate titans, with questionable human rights histories. Media criticism periodically ridiculed his peripatetic schedule with monikers such as Air Miles Andy, implying that the role had been used to enable a lifestyle of frequent travel masquerading as public service. Reports indicated abrupt private conduct during meetings, exacerbating apprehensions over his appropriateness as an ambassador for British principles. Significantly, it was during this time of formal representation that Andrew's connection with Jeffrey Epstein grew increasingly pronounced. By that time, Epstein, a wealthy businessman with a nebulous network of powerful acquaintances, had known and been affiliated with the prince since the 1990s. Their friendship, initially a social acquaintance, took on a more concerning one as charges against Epstein multiplied. Epstein was scrutinized for sexual offenses in Florida in 2005 and subsequently entered a contentious plea deal in 2008, culminating in a brief incarceration of 13 months in county prison, notwithstanding the severity of the allegations. The criticized plea agreement, seen as too lenient together with the inability of investigators and prosecutors to achieve broader responsibility at the time, would eventually serve as a central issue in public discussions around privilege influence and the judicial system. Notwithstanding these advancements, Andrew's association with Epstein continued throughout the 2010s. Photographs and documentation of social interactions, including a December 2010 encounter in New York, will thereafter be examined as indicators of bad judgment. The enduring nature of the connection, despite the mounting charges against Epstein and the continuous examination he faced, highlighted for critics a concerning apathy towards the reputational and ethical implications of such collaboration. For an individual occupying overtly state-related positions, particularly those advocating for the nation's economic interests, the selection of social associates transformed into a matter of not only personal preference, but also national obligation. The apex of these affiliations was the emergence of a controversial 2001 image of Prince Andrew with his arm around the midsection of Virginia Roberts, subsequently known as Virginia Giuffre, who was allegedly 17 at the time, according to claims key to the lawsuit. The photograph taken at the London residence of Ghislaine Maxwell, an acquaintance of Epstein, emerged as a central topic in public and legal discussions. Giuffre then claimed that she was trafficked by Epstein and Maxwell and compelled to engage in sexual contact with Prince Andrew 3 times from 1999 to 2002 in London, New York, and on Epstein's private island. For years, the palace contested or attempted to explain the photograph's validity and importance. Yet it continued to serve as a potent and enduring emblem within the story surrounding the prince's affiliations. Jeffrey Epstein was apprehended in July 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges in New York, and subsequently died by suicide in his Manhattan prison cell a month later, prompting heightened public and judicial scrutiny of his purported network of collaborators and enablers. Epstein's demise did not conclude the narrative. Instead, it shifted the focus onto those inside his social and professional sphere. In this situation, the prince faced mounting public pressure to confront the claims more openly. In light of that context, 2 more events intensified the case against Andrew. Initially, Ghislaine Maxwell, the socialite and long-standing companion of Epstein, was arrested and then convicted on charges of sex trafficking and perjury. Her conviction in late 2021 intensified public scrutiny of the network that had long been associated with Epstein. Secondly, survivors and activists for victims' rights have attained more visibility and influence in the years following the Docker Me Too movement, altering public expectations for institutional responses to claims of sexual assault. The changes in the social and legal framework indicated that claims of denial or orchestrated quiet were increasingly inadequate in meeting public demands for accountability. In this context, Prince Andrew chose to engage in a broadcast interview with the BBC's Newsnight program in November 2019, an initiative intended to safeguard his image by articulating his perspective on the events to a broad audience. The interview done by journalist Emily Maitlis was meant to refute claims and clarify his connection with Epstein. Nonetheless, it is generally considered a significant misjudgment. Instead of expressing contrition or empathy for Epstein's victims, the prince focused mostly on discrediting the allegations and providing answers that several observers deemed improbable or insensitive. He presented numerous significant defenses throughout the interview. To refute the assertion of his presence at a London nightclub with Giuffre. On a certain occasion, he provided an alibi stating that he had accompanied his daughter, Princess Beatrice, to a social event at a Pizza Express in Woking. In another purported meeting, he claimed to have a medical condition, specifically an inability to perspire at that time, owing to an adrenaline overload in the Falklands that contradicted Giuffre's precise description of him sweating excessively. He claimed that he did not regret his affiliation with Epstein itself, but only that such an affiliation had become unbecoming for a member of the royal family. Collectively, these justifications appeared implausible to many observers, lacking remorse, and failing to adequately acknowledge the seriousness of the allegations. The public's instant response was intense. Opinion surveys indicated a significant decrease in Andrew's favorability. Pundits across social media and conventional platforms criticized the interview as an instance of evasiveness and bad judgment. The Queen's confidential advisors and the royal institution at large had the challenging task of addressing the rapidly declining public opinion toward a senior working royal. Shortly after the broadcast and with the Queen's endorsement, Prince Andrew declared his intention to withdraw from public duties for the foreseeable future. This decision marked a significant withdrawal from public life for a senior royal and indicated the onset of a prolonged diminishment of his previous influence. Nevertheless, this departure did not alleviate the legal and public disputes that persisted around him. The subsequent legal escalation converted a reputational problem into an enforceable court process under American civil law. In August 2021, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, claiming sexual assault and violence in 3 previously stated events and requesting damages. A civil lawsuit contrasts with a criminal prosecution in that it is initiated by a private individual seeking monetary restitution or other remedies rather than by the state pursuing criminal penalties. Nonetheless, civil litigation may include significant investigative authorities such as discovery depositions and document production that may expose a defendant to rigorous examination and public visibility. Prince Andrew's legal counsel mounted a robust defense questioning jurisdiction and contending that a previous settlement agreement between Ms. Giuffre and Jeffrey Epstein in 2009 precluded her from asserting claims against third persons. The legal points were contested via papers and motions in federal court. In January 2022, Judge Lewis A. Kaplan rendered a decision denying the prince's petition to dismiss, thereby permitting the lawsuit to move forward. The judge's ruling was a critical juncture. It rendered the likelihood of Andrew being mandated to provide sworn testimony, undergo deposition, and confront public scrutiny of his actions a tangible reality. The risks of such exposure were significant. Civil discovery may have mandated the disclosure of internal correspondence, travel records, and more papers subject to public scrutiny with the potential for rigorous cross-examination under oath, which can be relentless even for the most seasoned public figures. For a constitutional monarchy whose legitimacy partially relies on the perceived integrity and dignity of its senior members, the prospect of a senior royal enduring a U.S. courtroom spectacle was unacceptable to the institution's guardians. The possibility of depositions yielding detrimental testimony from other parties, together with discovery uncovering networks of affiliation or facilitation, generated significant reputational risk that extended beyond the plaintiff's immediate claims. Confronted with such probability, the monarchy had a significant institutional quandary. The possibility of a senior royal undergoing cross-examination in an American court on purported sexual activity and associations with a convicted sex offender presented a significant reputational risk to the crown. Furthermore, the timing preceding significant royal events in 2022, such as the festivities for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, intensified the stakes. The institution's obligation to protect the monarchy from prolonged and detrimental exposure became the paramount concern. In this tense situation, Buckingham Palace released its definitive public statement on 13th of January 2022. The Queen, in an effort to maintain the monarchy's public image, rescinded Prince Andrew's honorary military positions, including his long-standing function as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, and revoked his royal patronages. The palace said that he would contest the case as a private individual and would cease to use the title His Royal Highness in any official context. The declaration signified a formal disavowal of the prince's public duties. He would retain his princely title by birth, although the privileges and obligations of official status would be rescinded. The objective was unequivocal. The institution required a definitive separation to avert more harm to the crown's prestige. The symbolism of the measures was significant. Military appointments and patronages serve not just as honors, they function as channels through which royals interact with civic life support organizations and represent the crown's connection to various societal segments. The removal of these linkages significantly diminished Andrew's ability to serve as a spokesperson of the monarchy and indicated to the public that the institution would not accept associational risk that may jeopardize its overall reputation. The cessation of patronages necessitated that the groups he had funded seek other benefactors or adapt to the absence of royal endorsement, an impact that demonstrated the tangible implications of a monarch's standing on civil society. In February 2022, the legal proceedings allegedly concluded, although controversially, when Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre agreed to an out-of-court settlement. The specific terms of the agreement were not publicly revealed. However, media reports suggested that the prince consented to pay a significant amount, reportedly in the millions of pounds, to Giuffre and to release a statement expressing remorse for his connection with Epstein and recognizing Giuffre's experiences. The deal notably included no formal acknowledgement of culpability by the prince, who has persistently refuted the claims leveled against him. Such settlements sometimes include a statement of remorse or an apology, while clearly denying culpability, serving to conclude litigation without an extended and possibly scandalous trial. The deal concluded the immediate legal processes, but failed to restore Prince Andrew's popular reputation. Many observers regarded the choice to settle instead of going to trial as an implicit acknowledgement of the associated risks and reputational dangers of a trial. The decision placed the prince in a state of constitutional and social ambiguity. He retains, by virtue of his birth, the titles of Duke and Prince, but he has been stripped of the public and ceremonial responsibilities that formerly characterized his public existence. His uniforms, accolades, and affiliations emblems that once connected him directly to public service were no longer viable as tools of persuasion or representation. The broader implications of this incident transcend the circumstances of a single royal family member. It demonstrates the constraints of conventional monarchical privileges when faced with modern requirements for openness, legal responsibility, and public oversight. The previous reliance on superficial denials and a preference for controlled silence to manage scandals has been altered by the dynamics of contemporary media, international legal frameworks, and social movements championing victims' rights, thereby changing what the crown can endure within its upper echelons. The prince's downfall illustrates that noble lineage and ceremonial prestige do not exempt a person from legal and moral responsibility at a time when reputational risk has direct institutional repercussions. Furthermore, the incident compelled the monarchy to address difficult inquiries about judgment, supervision, and the suitability of personal affiliations for those who embody the state's ideals and interests. The private relationships of royals, hitherto seen as primarily personal affairs, may have significant public and diplomatic repercussions when they coincide with criminal inquiries and claims of misconduct. The palace's decision to eliminate Prince Andrew's public positions simultaneously recognized the gravity of the issues aimed to safeguard the institution from more harm and highlighted the shifting expectations for public figures to exhibit ethical discretion. There are also legal and constitutional intricacies worthy of consideration. The monarch serves as the head of state under a constitutional framework, where the sovereign and immediate family fulfill functions primarily defined by tradition rather than explicit constitutional provisions. The decision to rescind patronages and military appointments is therefore a question of prerogative and internal royal management, as much as it is a public assessment. It illustrates the operational mechanisms accessible to the institution during a crisis. Restrictions may be imposed on public representation without modifying the fundamental hereditary titles. This divide was significant both legally and symbolically, allowing the crown to institutionally separate itself without enacting drastic constitutional changes. The case underscored the scope and constraints of global jurisprudence. Civil litigation in a single country may have significant extraterritorial influence, particularly when defendants are notable public personalities with international engagements. The capacity of American courts to evaluate claims against a foreign monarch, particularly regarding civil remedies, exemplified the permeable limits of legal responsibility in a globalized era. It also revealed contradictions between distinct legal cultures, British reluctance and deference to royal privacy, contrasted with American litigation practices that prioritize discovery and confrontational fact-finding. The incident stimulated extensive public discourse over the monarchy's accountability in contemporary society, transcending mere institutional considerations. Political commentators across the spectrum scrutinized the adequacy of current institutions for regulating royal behavior. Should senior royals adhere to more explicit standards of behavior, independent supervision, or more scrutiny of external affiliations? Some advocated for institutional means to address conflicts of interest and reputational damage, while others cautioned that excessive codification may undermine the historic flexibility enabling the crown to adapt and fulfill symbolic roles. The conflict between safeguarding the monarchy as an institution and holding its members to standard responsibility remains unsolved and is expected to influence discussions over royal affairs for the foreseeable future. The event also had significant ramifications for the charities and organizations that depended on Andrew's support and involvement. Certain organizations pursued new benefactors or modified their fundraising approaches, while others openly expressed sorrow about the abrupt withdrawal of royal support. This illustrated a further aspect of the cost. The reputational and financial repercussions permeated civil society, impacting institutions that lacked the resources and capability to address the consequences of a senior royal's demise. It prompted pragmatic inquiries on the wisdom of substantial reliance on royal patronage and the need for contingency strategies for entities whose success is linked to public figures. The case affected international diplomatic relations that depended on royal soft power. Andrew's journeys had facilitated access in areas where conventional diplomatic avenues were less efficacious. The departure of a royal person with expertise and connections removed a potentially advantageous, albeit contentious, resource from Britain's diplomatic arsenal. The practical issue was integral to the palace's deliberations. The monarchy must weigh the worth of an individual's services against the institutional expense of maintaining their association. The incident both mirrored and reinforced broader societal changes. The Me Too movement has transformed public debate around sexual misconduct and the treatment of survivors. The prince's case exemplified how these cultural shifts resulted in institutional repercussions. Advocates and activists for victims prominently contributed to boosting survivors' voices and urging institutions to take action. Legal reformers cited the case as proof of the need for enhanced processes to address charges of sexual exploitation, trafficking, and abuse, especially when such allegations involve influential persons. Ultimately, Prince Andrew's journey from a distinguished young naval officer who engaged in combat during the Falklands War to a formerly prominent trade envoy and supporter of various causes, and subsequently to a public outcast excluded from official life, illustrates a contemporary parable of privilege facing accountability. His wartime service, long a source of national respect, could not permanently protect him from the repercussions of relationships and activities that, when subjected to rigorous public and judicial examination, were detrimental. The monarchy's reaction, clearly distancing itself at a time of legal jeopardy, demonstrates a realistic assessment of institutional preservation in an era when reputation is intrinsically linked to legitimacy. This incident will be a pivotal moment in contemporary royal history, illustrating the boundaries of discretion, the repercussions of judgment, and the need for ancient institutions to evolve when personal conduct conflicts with public expectations. This has initiated broader discussions over the openness, oversight, and accountability expected of contemporary royals, as well as the sufficiency of informal palace management practices in meeting the requirements of 21st-century public life. For Prince Andrew, the amalgamation of legal complications, public disdain, and institutional disconnection has effectively terminated his role as a public servant. For the monarchy, the crisis serves as a reminder that authority rooted in tradition must be perpetually reaffirmed through ethical behavior and public approval. The ongoing impact of this occurrence on institutional practices and public attitude is undetermined. Will the palace implement a more stringent internal code regulating the behavior and affiliations of working royals? Will there be more defined parameters on appropriate conduct for those representing the crown publicly? These inquiries are not just theoretical. They address how a symbolic organization, which gains legitimacy from public confidence, can maintain that legitimacy in a time when private acts may be magnified and global legal frameworks might interfere. The prince's downfall may lead to gradual reforms, stricter regulations, more meticulous scrutiny of affiliations, and an increased focus on openness in patronage choices, or it may just become a cautionary narrative with its lessons gradually fading as institutional memory diminishes. The case has fundamentally transformed the lived experience of the royal family. It has redefined senior royals' perceptions of affiliation, influenced charities' management of patronage risk, and impacted public assessment of the conduct of those at the nexus of privilege and public responsibility. It has emphasized the democratic expectation that even hereditary representatives of the state would be evaluated against public norms of behavior and held responsible at least in terms of reputation when such standards are judged to be violated. When examined from a broader historical perspective, the incident prompts persistent inquiries about the equilibrium between personal life and public duty, the boundaries of discretion, and the processes by which institutions restore their ethical legitimacy. Monarchies endure by adapting to evolving societal norms while maintaining the symbolic essence that imparts significance to their existence. The House of Windsor's decision to limit Prince Andrew's public participation was a manifestation of that adaptive necessity, a decision to eliminate a clear source of detriment to safeguard the larger institution. The Crown's ability to transform short-term damage management into enduring institutional resilience will be a significant narrative in the next years. In summary, the unraveling of Prince Andrew's public career and the subsequent relinquishment of his honorary positions provide a succinct examination of the interplay between privilege, notoriety, and responsibility. It delineates the trajectory from acquired public respect to diminished legitimacy, highlighting the fragility of symbolic power in contemporary constitutional frameworks when detached from broadly recognized norms of behavior. The royal decision to remove itself was not only a crisis management tactic, it was a significant declaration about the limits of permissible public affiliation for individuals who represent the crown. The implications of that statement, legal, cultural, and constitutional, will endure long after the initial headlines have dissipated. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.